I didn't excuse you.
We have everybody. Okay, let's bring the city council workshop for October 1st, 2024 to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Carter,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Swatman,
Present.
Councilmember Baldwin,
Also present.
Councilmember Davis,
Present.
Councilmember Fullerton,
Here.
Councilmember Hubler,
Here.
Councilmember McClemens,
Present.
and Councilmember Rock.
Here.
All right, we have a proclamation that I will now read. Whereas Domestic Violence Awareness Month is held each October to unite advocates across the nation in their efforts to end domestic violence. And whereas, according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men in the U.S. will experience sexual or physical violence or stalking by an intimate partner during their lifetime. And whereas domestic violence can happen to anyone and is present in every community, including the Bonney Lake community. And whereas patterns of abusive behavior include physical and sexual assault, emotional abuse, isolation from friends and family, monitoring and controlling another's finances to gain power and control over them. And whereas children who grow up in violent homes are likely to also be abused and neglected. And whereas the city of Bonney Lake believes that our community, including every resident, should be a place of safety for all individuals. And whereas the city's Office of the Prosecuting Attorney prosecutes domestic violence related cases to hold perpetrators accountable for their actions. And whereas the city helps victims obtain resources and discuss safety plans. And whereas the city is grateful for the remarkable people and organizations that offer care and critical services to survivors of domestic violence, and remains committed to building a community where all people can feel safe and respected and live free from abuse. Now, therefore, I, Terry Carter, Mayor of Bonney Lake, with the full backing and encouragement of the entirety of the Bonney Lake City Council, do hereby proclaim that Bonney Lake declares October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in the city of Bonney Lake and encourages all citizens to actively stand against domestic violence in our community. Thank you. All right, next we have a presentation from Exodus Housing. I'll turn the floor over to Deputy City Attorney and Prosecutor Dina Burke.
Stands in the middle.
We need to
And
get you some.
Mr. Mayor, if it's okay, it's okay. We're gonna have Ms. Marie Saplan from Exodus Housing present.
Okay,
May I turn the floor over to her?
please, yes.
We don't want Yes, please.
Oh.
Okay, and I've got my mouse. So first of all, thank you so much for inviting Exodus Housing. Myself, my name's Marie. I've been with Exodus for 7 years. And prior to that, I worked for a high-risk domestic violence shelter in Tacoma. So I really appreciate everyone's concern and work towards helping those that are fleeing or having fled domestic violence. So I'm gonna go ahead and do a little presentation here, and then feel free to ask any questions as we go along. So again, my name's Marie. Let's see if I can. Oop. All right. So is that the back arrow there? There we go. All right, perfect. Okay, so actually very exciting. We're celebrating 30 years this year. It's our 30th anniversary of our organization. And we've been in Sumner. We've been in Sumner for many years, and we recently moved to Puyallup, is where our office is located at. And initially, the organization started off just helping low-income families and having a resource in East Pierce County because there were very limited resources back in 1994. And then in 2009, we changed and started working exclusively with families fleeing domestic violence. We are now 6 full-time staff as of probably 2 months ago. We hired on an additional part-time and 2 more full-time staff since our work is increasing, unfortunately. Our annual budget last year was just over 1.3 million, with the good majority of it coming from public funding, and that's where we are able to help clients with moving costs, rent subsidies, and application fees, those types of expenses, while we're trying to help them move into safe and long-term housing. And then we do also write for private grants, donations, individuals, organizations, and this helps us have more flexibility with our funding, and we're able to help clients that need to go back and, you know, get their high school education or maybe a driver's license or, you know, any other form of needs that the housing funding won't provide, helping them fix their car if they need to get to work. This just gives us flexibility in other ways that we're able to support them become self-sufficient. And our mission statement, I mean, we're encouraging independence, empowerment, and self-sufficiency to households fleeing domestic violence by providing access to permanent housing, tailored services, and community resources. So we work with any client within Pierce County. We help them find housing anywhere within Pierce County, and that's what our funding allows us to do. We don't own any units, so we're working with landlords to advocate for our clients in order to find them housing that's safe, maybe in a location where their abuser doesn't normally go or wouldn't think to look for them. So that's our mission statement. And then with the services that we're able to provide, the main goal is to get them permanently housed. That's one of the big obstacles, of course, is once you flee the situation, where you're going to be able to live and be able to afford that. We also do customized case management. So I'm a case manager, and we work side by side with the clients to help them go back to fulfilling and looking at their dreams and, you know, goals and where they want to be. And we work with them and then tailor their needs. You kind of work with them with other organizations and tag team being able to do that. One of the big things that we're able to do, as I mentioned, is pay for a rental subsidy. They pay 30% of their income, and then we'll pay the remainder with the goal that they're continuously increasing their income. So at the end of the program, which varies for everybody, depends on the family's need, then they're able to maintain that rental on their own and be stable and housed. So, and then of course the other monthly, the moving costs, we pay the deposits and all the moving costs, which can get expensive. I mean, as I'm sure all of you are aware, rental costs right now are very, very high. And so most of our families are single head of household with children. So it makes it difficult, you know, to be able to maintain that. And so it's really important that we're able to connect them with other resources as well to help. Okay. So real quick, again, your proclamation was amazing, and thank you. It did touch on a lot of the highlights of what is domestic violence. And I think that sometimes we forget that we're all human, and so everybody's situation is so different. And sometimes we want to help others in that situation. And what we think might be beneficial to them isn't always the case. And so just being there is really important, but it's all about power and control, whoever it comes from, if it's the husband or the wife or, you know, a long-term boyfriend or, you know, somebody that they've just met. It's all about power and control. And as we all know, it affects everybody. It doesn't matter income, doesn't matter race or, you know, where you're from. It just hits on every household. And so we're really working hard to, wherever they're at, meet them where they're at and move forward. The real thing is gaining trust of the client, which can take time, and just being aware of maybe some of the past traumas that they've endured, that they may be slow to make progress. And I think for some of us that are trying to help families too, and we can't understand, why they're not just moving forward. There's a lot more. It's like a spider web. So it's, yeah, a little bit difficult sometimes for sure. And then all the different types of abuse. And I'll go through that as I show some of the wheels of abuse that I've got in the slide presentation as well. And this is the first one. This is the most typical one, the original one, where it talks about the power and control. I think if people have seen that, this is probably one of the first ones, or one that you're familiar with, talking about, it's a slow process. I think we all realize that if somebody was to come out and hit us right away, of course we would leave the relationship, but it's not that way. We always think of the analogy of putting a frog in water, a pot of water on the stove, and over time, initially the frog's just swimming around and nothing's going on, but as that heat starts to intensify, the water starts to boil and they lose their mobility. And so it's a grooming, it's a long process. It's not just overnight. We talk about emotional abuse, threats. I think we all would, if we have children, if somebody was to threaten to kill our children, that would probably keep us from leaving. I mean, there's just some real issues, or killing themselves, or going after their family, or not having financial resources, keeping all the money, not allowing you to work. So there's a lot of reasons behind people not being able to leave. And this one is really important too now in the digital age. I don't think people are really aware how, all this new technology can be helpful and harmful at the same time. Having cameras to keep out intruders, but also a lot of those cameras are used to monitor, the abuser uses them to monitor what's happening, what's going on, where the person is going, where the victim's leaving to, or going to, tracking their cell phones, watching if they've got the account in their name, they can see all the lists of the phone calls that they're making. So if they're making a call to a shelter or making a call to the Justice Center to get help, all that stuff they can see. And it makes it very difficult. I had a case where a client had left. The car she was driving was still registered in both of their names. And she did a California stop, went around the corner, and one of the traffic lights that took the picture of the vehicle sent the ticket to the house where she fled from. So the abuser got the ticket and the picture of the intersection where she was. So then he narrowed down the area that she was in. So all these things that we don't think about, of course, looking on our computers and doing Google searches, pretty easy to track what you've looked at and where they've been. So, and then this one is about immigrant women that come over, or other family members that come over and are threatened by being deported, or taking their children away and then never seeing them again, and not getting their green cards. And oftentimes they use this as power and control, that they aren't going to get, their citizenship if they don't follow and do everything that they're told to do. Just another wheel of power and control. I think this is probably one of the most complicated to understand is, why don't people flee? And I know I touched on it a little bit, but again, there's probably, looking at this list, probably some of the four core ones that I hear often are, one, being financial. They don't have the money and they don't know what they would do, in order to get money, because oftentimes they haven't worked or don't have a work history. The other one is children. The threat of them, usually the abuser has them finances, they can hire a good attorney, get child custody of the children, and that's the last thing. And then if she leaves and she has a kid and she has nowhere to go, she's afraid that he'll take the children because she's homeless or in a shelter. So all this information that isn't necessarily accurate, but they aren't aware of. The other thing is, as I mentioned, fear. I mean, if you can imagine just taking your car keys, taking your credit cards, your house key, everything, and leaving it on the table at your house and walking out the door and realizing you can't go back. What's ahead of you if you don't have a job and you don't have education? And, so it's the fear of that, the fear of them harming your family members, the fear of them harming the children. And at what point do you want to take that risk to find out if it's really going to happen or not? So there's all these reasons that make it very, very difficult for people to leave. And the other side of that too is, I know as in the proclamation, it was said 1 in 4 people are experiencing or have experienced domestic violence. So in this room and in our family circles, in those circles, we have had somebody, or we ourselves, or whatever the situation might be. So we want to help that person. And why don't you share with me? Why don't you tell me you went through this? Well, it can be dangerous. It can be dangerous for you as a friend, and it can be dangerous for the survivor, because if somebody was to go and say, you need to stop treating her that way, just knock it off. We know what's going on and you need to stop it. Well, then she goes home and he realizes that now she's sharing that with other people, and it gets worse. Every time you leave and try to come back, it gets worse. So all these aspects of DV just continue. It's just so complex and complicated. Not as easy as it sounds to just leave. Okay, and then often barriers, and these are when we receive clients into our program, a lot of these are things that we're dealing with: depression, mental health issues, due to the domestic violence, living in an environment where you're walking on eggshells day in and day out, trying to protect the children, lack of a support system. Either he's isolated the family so that they can't communicate with others, or the bridges have been burned because families are exhausted of trying to help and feeling like nothing's changing. Also, we've got clients that don't have their driver's license. In fact, yesterday I was talking to one of my clients who, first time she's ever lived on her own. She's probably in her mid-20s, first apartment she's ever had. Didn't finish her GED, didn't have her driver's license. We got her housed. So little by little, I've been working with her, to do these little goals. And sometimes it's small steps before we can do much more than that. Well, she didn't have her driver's license, really wanted it, was really afraid to take it because she was afraid to fail. And so I told her, I said, look, I will pay for that test, and I'm not expecting you to pass. If you pass, great. Let's just take it. You'll see what's on it, and let's do it. So finally she did. She took the test. Sure enough, she failed. She felt bad. She was, just heartbroken. So I said, it's fine. Let's do it again. No, I'm not ready. I can't do it. It's just too much for me right now. So I said, okay, just let me know when you're ready and we'll do it again. So about 3 or 4 weeks go by and she calls me and she says, I passed my written test and my driving test. And I was like, what? She goes, yep, I passed it. I did it. And she was thrilled. So yesterday we had our meeting. We do our case management meeting. We were talking. Said, so you've passed your exams, right? Yeah. And she said, they gave me a paper, but they told me that my license was going to be coming in the mail. So we're talking, and all of a sudden I hear her say, oh my gosh. And I was like, are you okay? Are you okay? What's happened? She goes, I just got my license in the mail and I just opened it. I can't believe it. I have my driver's license. I have a driver's license. I can't believe it. She just kept repeating it. And she said, and I look good too. My picture looks good. Mm-hmm. And I just laughed, but it was like just one more small step. And now she's thinking about joining the military and making those next steps, with these allowing her to build that confidence back again and realizing that she can do it. So yeah, everybody's path is so different on moving forward. And as I said, our job as case managers is to just give them options, guide them, connect them to resources, be their biggest cheerleader, find out what their goals and dreams are and put them on paper so that they can put it on that fridge and look at it every month. And then we look at it again. Okay, we get to check that one off. You did that. You got your license. You got a job. You're saving for a car. Okay, let's look at your budget. We do a budget with them every month as well. And so once that gets done, it becomes more of a pattern and an understanding for them, and it just kind of helps move along. So we do a monthly meeting, which is, as I mentioned, goals and budget, giving the community resources, and then wraparound services. So we work with mental health providers, DSHS, I'll be on a 3-way conversation just so that we're all able to support the client in the same direction. And then partnerships and community engagements, opportunities like this to speak about what we do and who we help, and, finding other opportunities to get resources for clients as we move them into their new places. They often come with nothing but the clothes on their back or, a small bag of items. We connect them to Northwest Furniture Bank, try to get them with furnishings and, just set up for success, make that house the home that they've not had and that they can just relax and enjoy to make those next steps in their life. So, and that's where we do gas cards. We're able to provide gas cards and often therapy, or we've paid for attorney fees, just a multitude of things because everybody's needs are so different. The clients that we've served last year, we served 127 households. That's 381 individuals, and of that, 252 were children. So our largest population that we serve are the children in these homes that also need stability and support and community. We had 98 households sign leases. Some of the households end up going into another program or find other resources, end up moving out of the area. So, and then we have our own goals as an organization that we try to meet. And as of last year, it was amazing that we were able to, we want 80% of our households to retain their housing. We had 91%. And, so those marks for ourselves are we're real happy about. The average stay in our program is about 10 months. Some need the entire 12-month, some need less. It just really depends on where they're at when they come into the program. This is just another story. This is, and again, just to show the differences in the clientele that we serve. This family came to us. She fled from Wisconsin. She was in sex trafficking and domestic violence. She was employed, educated. When she came, we were able to connect her to TANF, which is government assistance, and it is only $528 a month. So definitely not enough to sustain a household, let alone get an apartment. With that, we were able to get her housed, and she was able to find employment. She finished her master's degree, so she had the education piece already in line. We helped her with her car, get car repairs, so she was able to get to work. She got her kids in school, and she was able to start paying off some of her debt and reclaiming her credit again. So this was a quick, which is, the goal for some, she was able to get in. She started earning her $67,000 to gain her stability and self-sufficiency. More of the stories that we have are, for example, I had a client who came with never working. She was in her 40s. She had 5 kids. He kept her home all the time, and she was raising those children. And she didn't get her high school diploma. She didn't have a degree. She was very insecure about smiling and talking because her front teeth were missing due to domestic violence. And so when we talked about employment and those kinds of things, she didn't want to face people. She didn't want to go out. She was fearful. And again, it was just little tiny steps that we were able to get her into counseling as well as her children. and we connected her so that she could get a bridge and get her front teeth replaced and get her smile back. And she still was afraid of working because she hadn't done it before and was very afraid of failure, which is often the case. And so she didn't drive, she didn't have a driver's license, but there was a McDonald's within walking distance of her apartment. And so I said, what about this? Let's give it a try. And she wasn't sure. And so I saw that they were hiring, and I let her know that, they're hiring. We got her some interview clothing and kind of coached her a little bit. And so finally, it probably was about 7 months in our program that she went over and spoke to them and did an application. And of course, she was hired on the spot. It's like, we need help. So she started working there. And a month later, when we met again, she's like, they're promoting me to manager. She loved her job. She enjoyed it. She said she never felt better. I kind of laughed with her. I said, I think you like getting out of the house from those 5 kids every once in a while. And she laughed, but she was a great mom. But she said, it feels so good to earn my own money and to spend it how I want to spend it. And so it's just these little things, these small things that kind of snowball and then give them that confidence to make the next steps to get a car. But we're working with people, that are on the bus or whatever it takes, and then to make those next steps. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, just kind of to recap, everybody's story is different. Sometimes we just can't understand where they're at or why they're not doing it a way we might see might be a better way, because there's a lot of things that can't be shared. So I brought a resource here. This is a book that I really, really recommend to people that are experiencing domestic violence or people that are trying to help somebody who is. Great author. He's done a lot of research in jails and things about men in particular, but it can be broad enough to share, why they do it and what kind of more in-depth look at domestic violence and how we can help. Any questions? Hope I didn't take too much time. I'm sorry.
That was good.
I will leave my business card too if people want. That way, if you do later want to ask any questions, I can, or you've got my contact information too. So thank you.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Maria. Appreciate it.
For what you do.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Bet. Deliver them out.
All right.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm not talented enough to hold the mic and talk to you guys, so I'm moving.
All right. So we'll move on to the presentation from Chief Financial Officer Sherry Ryerson.
Yay.
Yay.
So I know this says Budget 101. There's going to be some 101. We're going to talk about the budget, and I'm going to open it up for questions. I don't have anything formal prepared. I've been doing this about 18 years, so I hope I have it figured out by now. I'm going to bounce around, so if you want to look at your screen, you can, but I'm going to move it up here because I kind of want to go back and forth between some things. So this isn't actually where I want to start. This is where we're at. What I want to start with is, sorry, if you hold on, our funds. So we can talk a little bit about what fund accounting is. And you can all hear me, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Easiest way. What? I think it's on screen sharing, isn't it? Chuck took my mouse, sorry. Am I good? Okay, so we're going to bounce over here because this is the easiest place you can see what all of our funds are. We have the general fund, the drug fund. As you can see, easier for me to point. These are our funds.
Page 32.
Thank you. What we talk mostly about, and what you hear a lot about, is the general fund. And the questions I get most is, well, you say we have no money, but we have money. I'm kind of confused. So I'm going to start there. The top is what our 2025, what I'm projecting our beginning balance will be. And then the ending balance is at 21,000 at the end of our 2026. So the biennial budget, right? So it's the stuff in the middle that I'm concerned about when I prepare a budget. So the ins and the outs. How much revenue are we bringing in and how much are we spending? That's the stuff you're going to see on the pages preceding, and I'll get to those. For this biennium, we're looking to spend approximately 1.6 million more than what we have, what I'm projecting we're bringing in. I actually don't think it'll be quite that bad because sales tax is starting to come up. So I think we'll use a little less of the fund balance. And I'll get into what we've cut already from the budget. The budget's pretty much year over year, pretty the same. So this is kind of the different funds we have. And when you hear me talk, you've got the general fund. That's the one that the bulk of our conversations surround, right? Do we have money? Do we not have money? I'm projecting you're going to have about $21 million at the end of 2026. So you do have money. But when we're talking about is a budget balanced and what that looks like, the easiest way for me to describe that would be if you look at your checking account and say you make $1,000 every month, we're just going to make math easy, and you're only spending $500 every month, right? You know that you're bringing in more than what you're spending. And that's what we want to make sure that we're doing on a normal basis with the city. Occasionally, you might need to buy a car. And so you might spend more that year than you brought in that year. And that's okay. It's a one-time purchase, right? So when you hear me talking about one-time purchases, that's what I'm talking about. And that's where it comes out of your ending fund balance, which most people at home would say it's my savings, right? It's the money I didn't spend and I just kind of sock over to savings for those one-time purchases. Is that making sense? And please ask questions as we go along, because I want to make sure that I'm getting all these questions that people have been going, she's not making sense. What is an ending fund balance?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
under the general fund column, then, based on what you're saying.
Yep.
Even though there is an ending balance of the 21 million, there is still a deficit of 1.6 million.
Correct.
Okay.
There is a deficit on what I'm projecting the ins and what the departments have asked for the outs.
Okay.
Right. So I don't think it'll end up being quite 1.6. Like I said, sales tax starting to come up. I sent you guys the report on that. But I'm very conservative when I budget on the revenues, and then, the expenditures, you kind of, so that way you're not caught going, oh gosh, how are we going to make this up? I'd rather up front. So let's jump back. Let me figure out what page we're going to be on here. So this here is our current budget, and then the actuals for 22, 23, where I'm projecting 24 will be. And, I asked Chuck to actually look at this for me. I said, is there anything you think I can do to make this a little more clear and understanding? He goes, yeah, put in a chart. Well, I tried to do a chart, Chuck, and it's pretty flat. So I thought, well, that doesn't really tell a story because we're not really spending more money. If you look between the years, there's not a big significant increase in what we're spending in 24, 25, 26. There are some increases over 23. We'll get into what happened in 22, 23 and why that went up in just a second. General fund, again, this is the one I'm always looking the most at. It's the one that, most of our activity happens in. You can certainly spend the time to go through the other detail.
Page 25. Yeah, yeah.
What's that?
Yeah.
Page 25, yeah,
Yeah.
like that, yeah.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, we're at
Page-
page
we can just
numbers.
do it.
We were trying to
Oh.
follow along at home here.
Oh, okay. So we're going to go back. I don't know what page this is, if somebody can help me. Page 1?
21.
Okay. So we're going to talk about kind of how we got there. You see 24, 25, 26 all look pretty similar in what we're spending. So what happened the years prior? How did that go up a little bit? Well, prior council added 2 police sergeants instead of sergeant upgrades. They actually added 2 police officers. We added a records and disclosure specialist. The HR generalist was increased. Lead facility worker, Jason reminded me that was a swap. So that actually didn't increase the budget. That was a swap, changing a position for another. We added prosecutor. Obviously, we all know the cost of the city attorney and defense counsel has gone up significantly. We also lost the before and after school program, which we lost revenue from that. And then the increased cost of insurance, jail, and I guess I put the attorneys on there twice, I wanted to drive that one home. So that's kind of why the expenses went up, right? So what did we do to try to balance this year's budget? Working with city administrator and the mayor, we've worked on reducing the contract attorney costs by about $150,000 per year. These are all projections, so it could be more or less than that. The mayor made the decision to eliminate all out-of-state travel unless there's a grant for it. We are also reducing the credit card fee charge by about $40,000. We negotiated with the vendor to reduce what they charge us, so that reduced that. The mayor has, I'm sure you've heard about the quote hiring freeze, and that's possible staffing reductions or rearrangements of staffing if vacancies arise. Yet to be seen on, any vacancies we have. So any vacancy will be evaluated by the mayor, and he'll determine if it makes sense to hire that position or possibly change it for something that makes more sense for where we're at today. Reducing the recreation from a net loss, they were asking for about 350,000 over what they're bringing in revenue. And the mayor said, I support the 148 that the council approved previously. So that's in there at a $148,000 loss per year. We worked with the directors and managers to reduce their budget requests by about $500,000 as well. And reducing overtime in the recreation manager spot. That one's being currently advertised. And then what do we need to consider for the future? As you saw, for the biennium, we're about 1.6 over. So we need to kind of look at where do we go from here? And we're not the only city going through this right now, I'll tell you. We are not unique. When I was at the conference 2 weeks ago, most cities are feeling this much harder than we are. I think Kirkland told me he was like 20 million out of budget. SeaTac was like 12. I think City of Des Moines was around 12. So everyone's experiencing this. It's not just us. Everything, costs have increased and the revenue we're getting in has not. So things we can consider in the future, a transportation benefit district, parks district, public safety sales tax. We found out about that at conference. It's a voted tax, a B&O tax. I know we've talked about that a couple times here with previous council, possibly charging the credit card fees for permits. So right now the city pays all the credit card fees. If somebody uses a credit card, if you go and pay your property tax bill, if you're someone that does that yourself and not through your mortgage, if you go to the county's website, they're charging you for that. There's like a surcharge, 3% or 5%. We can certainly start doing that. Permits is one area that people have talked about possibly charging that out on. We can also possibly implement utility tax on Tacoma Water and Valley, just like Auburn implemented on us. We're currently getting those numbers ready for the mayor so that he can look at that and decide whether or not that's something he wants to bring forward. The Finance Committee is currently looking at the permit fees to align with what it costs us. And then a suggestion that was made actually by the deputy mayor to me was possibly looking at red light cameras as well. So those are things we can do in the future. And I kind of wanted to talk about our ending fund balance. So this is the part, where did we start? When I started here, we had about $2.4 million in our ending fund balance. As you can see, I've kind of tried to take most of the highlights to, you could see what we've done over the years. And at the end of 23, we had a balance of about $24 million. So we've been adding to our ending fund balance pretty significantly. You started spending it on parks, great thing to spend it on, one-time expenditures. You just approved the software transition. That's a one-time expenditure, so another great thing to spend it on. I'm sure there are going to be what you're going to be faced with. So the budget's pretty much presented here. as the mayor wishes, right? What you're going to see in the upcoming weeks is what we call decision cards, and those would come out of any ending fund balance. Decision cards are new programs or services that the departments want to offer. So an example would be there's some additional what do you call those, Jason? Card readers. There's some additional card readers that they're asking for, things like that. So they're going to come forward with these decision cards over the next 5-6 weeks. And you're going to hear why they want this new thing and whether or not you value it. And you're going to kind of go, yeah, include that in the budget, or no, Sherry, don't include that in the budget. And that's your final budget will include or not include those things that you see. So all the different department heads will come forward with the explanation, and you guys can talk about whether you think it's valuable and whether or not that's something you should spend your money on. Any questions about the ending fund balance?
I mean, decision cards normally just go through you first anyway, right? It's not like they can throw any kind of decision card out into the council. They like, hey, let's get this. And then all of a sudden
So-
we're like, we're broke.
So my requirement is simply, if it's new, I want to know about it.
Yeah.
Because the budget is pretty much everything they've already done. Anything new should be evaluated by you guys, right? So the mayor and I and John sat down and went through all the decision cards. He's already pulled some out saying, yeah, we're not ready for that. Or that's not something that I see we can do at this point. There are a lot less decision cards than there were in the past. So I think that's going to be helpful too. I think everybody realizes that there's, limited funds. Obviously, the general fund does have some money, but there's also some things that it sounds like you guys are discussing, parks and possibly the public safety building, senior center. There are things that you're eventually wanting to spend that money on. And so you got to kind of remember, hey, that money, general fund money can go to anybody, right? Other people's money can't go to the general fund. So once you transfer that out, it's not ever coming back, right? So when you transferred all that money to the park fund, it's now parks money, the parks gets to spend it, and it's not coming back to your general fund. It's fine. It's what you guys value and it's what you voted for. So it's perfect use.
It's the mayor's budget when he, gives it to us, right, in this particular case. So the mayor may, expose you to things that you get to make a decision on, or there may be things like Sherry talked about that the mayor has already said, no, we're not even going to present those or not. So,
And I mean, yeah, there are things that the mayor may have already said no, but there might be something that you guys go, hey, I'd really like to see
Right,
this.
yeah.
So that's how we ended up with the 2 cops, right?
Right.
I don't remember who was all here at that time,
That was me.
deputy mayor, but quite a few people were.
That was me.
And that's how you ended up with 2 cops. So the then Chief Jeter came and said, hey, I just want to change 2 of my patrol officers to be sergeants so that I can have better coverage on my shifts. And you guys sat down and you go, no, we want to actually give you 2 more cops. And yeah, so that happens, right? So you guys may sit out here and talk and go, you know what? No, we want to do this. And that's part of the budget process too. If there's something you're going, hey, let's do this. Obviously, adding cops at this time when we already have a budget deficit's kind of tricky. I'd need to know what you want me to do there, but I wouldn't suggest doing too many ongoing expenses with your general fund at this point. One-time expenses, not that big of a deal in my mind because you have $24 million. And I think that's all I really have. Let's see here. This page here, we can just kind of talk high level about what the pages are and what they mean. The top section is all the revenues that I'm projecting. For this one is 25. There's a separate page for 26. And then what all of the departments have asked, obviously left-hand side's general fund, and then every fund has their column and how much they've asked for. What you're going to get next week is the CIP, and I believe I actually included it in here. Hold on. So the CIP is on page 16.
Yeah, not ours.
Not your 16. What 16? What page are we on? Chuck's looking.
Looks like 36.
Yeah, 36.
36. So page 36 is the CIP. Jason will be going through the CIP with you guys next week.
Capital improvement projects.
Yeah, sorry, capital improvement project. So Jason will be going through all of these next week. Some of the priorities have changed, and so he's going to have that discussion. The mayor wanted to make sure you guys are aware of different priorities that changed from particularly the water and sewer and stormwater funds, since rate studies were done based upon projects in certain years. So he's going to have that conversation with you next week. And then if that's 36, 37, 38, I'm learning 39, 40. On page 40 is what we call our equipment rental and replacement fund. And these are the vehicles that are going to be replaced in the next 2 years. We have not saved enough for all of these vehicles, so hence the overage column. We have a fund, you'll see 501, the equipment fund. It saves for all the vehicles so that they can be replaced and it's not a huge burden, a one-time burden. However, some people like to either change the vehicle use, and so they may have had a car and now need a truck for doing a particular job. So sometimes those go over. And that's just what we haven't saved.
Do we have those, Sherry, in that ER&R fund
Yes.
identifiable easily enough by ones that are basically out of the general fund versus the enterprise fund kind of vehicles?
I do. So if it has a GF behind it, that doesn't mean gluten-free. It actually means
Oh.
general fund.
Nice.
And I can say that. I have celiac, so. So yeah, it means general fund. So those are the ones that are coming out of your general fund. The mayor also did look at this list and reduced this list pretty significantly. And Jason and the chief also went through it and said, hey, you know, some of this stuff we can delay until we have a fleet manager to better manage when we're replacing some of these vehicles. So that was looked at as well.
So,
I have a question then.
Yep.
Okay, so then for the ER&R, sorry, fund, I'm seeing that there's like an ending balance total of what, 1.1? Am I looking at that right then?
Let me bounce
Like
back.
all the vehicles that you say have the
Page three.
overage, I'm on page 34. I'm just looking at the main
I'm
2026,
running back.
2025
Yep.
budget.
So at the end of 26, I think that fund, I'm projecting it'll have about 1.1. You're correct.
Okay, and that's to cover cars that need to be replaced in that list that you just showed.
That fund replaces all the vehicles. So
Okay.
we are constantly evaluating, every fund is paying into and every department is paying into this fund if they have a car. So if, say, the chief's car needs replaced in 6 years, well, I've spread that cost out over 6 years, inflated it, and am charging that
They're saving.
yearly.
basically.
Yep, to save for it. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And then the last part of your budget, well, there's two actually. The FTE chart, which shows the employees back to 2019. And what was amended, that looks a little funny on the sheet, but it's amended in 24. And then what you have budgeted in 25, 26. The mayor has, with the hiring freeze, did not authorize any new positions in this budget. So everything is the same unless it was negotiated a change, like Jason's department negotiated some changes in 24, I believe. Didn't see a need for an electrician any longer. And so he kind of negotiated some other changes. I think the lead utility worker was one of those as part of that. The department needs changed. And then the last little tidbit is thanks to yours truly, Deputy Mayor Swatman. He brought this in 2008, that there's a resolution adopted that the city council should always know in the budget process if there's any out-of-state travel. And at this point, the only out-of-state travel that's been authorized was grant funded, and it's the All Rise conference. So that is the only out-of-state travel unless a department comes to you and says, hey, I got a grant, and gets it approved by the mayor and then you guys.
Sherry, on the ER&R fund on page 40.
40, okay,
So like a brush chipper.
yep.
And you got like 100,000 in there for 2026, but then you have the overage at 62,000.
Yeah, so that means we have 40,000-ish saved
Okay.
for the brush chipper. They either went up a lot more than what we saved for, or they're asking for something a little bit different.
Okay.
Yeah.
So note to council for when you're looking at, of course, those things, the gluten-free units are in general fund.
Yes.
So those ones you definitely have to keep an eye on, how they have, don't look at the brush chipper at $100,000 and think, oh my gosh, we can save that if we don't buy that thing. Yes, you can, but it's, what is it, streets or something? It's one of the enterprise.
So it's multiple. That one's multiple.
Yeah.
I'd have to look it up. The brush chipper and if it says new, that means, they're asking for an addition, and that's the
Yeah.
Caterpillar wheel loader. Say that 10 times.
Yeah.
And that one, you can see the overage is 202 because it's brand new. They've saved nothing for it.
Yeah, so those ones are going to go against your different enterprise funds.
Correct.
So they're, they are costs and stuff, but they're not as, directly impacting your general fund.
I had a question. So with the full-time equivalent, the FTE, is that 40 hours then, if you're one?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, and so how come some people have, 22? 2.0, right? If 1.0 is 40, am I reading that right?
22 people. Yeah. So where are you at?
Oh.
Are you on the public works one?
Okay, you're showing basically the equivalent that each person is a 40-hour
Mhm.
week person, but there are 22
22 people.
under that.
Yep.
Got it.
So so the maintenance worker is now 21 people. But yeah, they have 21 people,
Got it.
full-time people.
And some of them get split up if you can see that. What's the explanation behind that, right? Only 12.75, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Or the 0.3, 0.8, 0.5.
So the ones that look a little wonky are your senior center, because they have a couple of, I think 0.4 and 0.7. And so we just kind of add it together to figure out what that equivalent is of full-time employees.
Yeah.
Like the senior center aide, the dishwasher, and then the kitchen assistant, that's 2 positions. I'm sorry, the kitchen aide is 2 positions. One is, I think, 0.75, and the other one's the balance of it, like 0.4, something like that.
So even though, yeah, right, because are they split? There's some employees, I don't know. how they-
It's mostly the senior center that has the split ones, yeah. And you're gonna see this document for the next 6, 7 weeks. Not the stuff before the budget, but everything that says, oh, this is part of the budget presentation below. The agenda bill after, you're gonna continue to see this for the next 6 to 8 weeks. And I am always available. If you can't think of what your questions are right now, call me or send me a message and let me know when you want to call, and I'll certainly make time for you. If you call my desk phone, it reaches me. Yeah.
So if I might go back to the general fund for a second there, it looks, okay, very good, thank you. Say page 32, right? Is that one?
Which one's page 32?
Oh, the big black bar, there
This
we
one?
go.
Okay.
General
Are you on the 25 or 26?
Biennial
25,
budget.
26 biennial,
Not this page?
That
go
one.
up one or up. There you
Page?
go.
Okay.
Is that what?
And this is what combines them.
Okay, yeah, the combined total, right? The thing that the council generally eventually signs off on is the
Correct.
bottom line, the big number. So we're projecting again that our operating revenues and other sources at like $48,747,378.
That's right.
Okay,
I need to get that $8 in there.
right. And then, of course, our
52 cents.
expenditures on that same, is that?
50,384,228.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I was thinking, is that the biannual figure or is
it
that
is.
the annual?
Yep, it's both.
So it's,
So to see the detail in each of them is the next 2 pages.
but that's the 2 years, it's the 2025, 26 budget.
Correct.
So in the 2 years, we're projected to spend 1.636850,000 over. So in the 2 years, so it's only like 800 and some odd thousand per
Correct.
year over kind of thing.
And you can see that on your next page. If you scroll to the very bottom, in 25, I'm projecting to use about 650,000 of that. 26 is a little bit more. If we don't adopt anything that I discussed on the different revenues we can kind of go after.
Or if your
if-
sales tax doesn't come in over like it always does, right?
I've been keeping an eye on it. You're right, but as Councilmember Baldwin said to me, she likes that I'm conservative. So
Uh-huh. Look at that, nice. But my question to the council is gonna be, how conservative is the council gonna wanna be on things, right? So, you'll have to think about that. It's the first time I recall in history that the city of Bonnie Lake would be spending more than they would be bringing in, right?
So it's actually not. I consulted a couple directors that have been here longer than I have, and they said the prior director actually would do it quite a bit.
Not under our budget that we've passed in how many years? So that was like.
In 10 years that I've been here, you're right. We have not had a budget presented that that have spent more than what I'm projecting to bring in. Now, I could have easily said, I think 650, I'm probably going to get it. I could fudge these numbers, but I'm not going to do that, right? Because I like to be transparent. I do believe that we will spend a little bit more than what we're going to bring in.
Yeah.
And I want you to see that.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what the full council thinks.
When the mayor and I talked about the budget, he was not in favor of laying people off. And that was the only way we could get there, is if we worked on, looking at layoffs or, taking some of our savings,
Mhm.
because that's what it's there for, and saying, you know what, yep, we see that this is going to be a continual problem. How do we solve that in the future? Well, the only way you're going to solve that is by laying people off permanently or by increasing the revenues.
Or
So he
decreasing
wants,
expense, yeah, exactly. You don't have to lay people, that's not exactly it's kind of dramatic, right?
you saw what the mayor was dealt with.
Sure.
I think when I presented the budget to him, I said, I'm really sorry. This is the first time it's been like this. We're about $5 million off. And we've gotten it down
Yeah,
to about 1.6. So I think we did really good work. The mayor made a lot of tough decisions, and I felt really bad for him. Yeah, yeah.
That is how I felt. I came in and just.
Right?
Yeah, but that's what government should do.
Yeah. So.
Look
it
at
was-
the things.
But she's right. I'm not in favor of laying anybody off. I
Yeah.
think there is a rainy day. It's kind of a rainy day fund almost, and this is the rainy day. So I think we do have to get through this. Obviously, I don't think we can do this on an ongoing basis. If this were the same discussion in 2 years, I'd be like, might have to have a different talk, right? But I think this is that time, and hopefully sales tax comes back and we do some other things as far as revenue comes in.
Are we gonna be then discussing, what page was it on? Hold on.
21?
I think it was the first, very beginning, yeah, page 21. Are we gonna be talking about, some of these options? Cause there's some here that I am just like.
The revenue options in the future, yeah. So
But there's some like, okay.
yep. So the idea was just kind of show you things that can be considered. Obviously, it's going to be up to the mayor and deputy mayor if these get brought back before the council. And so I'll be working with them over the next, year and a half to decide what we're bringing back and gathering more information for you guys.
These aren't the only options. There are always others,
This is-
so.
Please.
This is
give us
just
the list.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, it's not like anybody, I think, knows all of the issues, because I think, like Sherry pointed out, they just learned that this public safety sales tax was available recently, so things change.
Public safety sales tax.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's that?
Plain public
Explain
safety
it.
sales tax. What is-
So it's 0.1% that we can, we have to go out for voter approval on it, and then that would increase our sales tax. So, yeah. And the voters have to approve that one.
So just kind of just thinking this through and wanting to make sure that we follow through on, like, are we gonna have an official time that we're gonna talk about those? So that we
Not-
know-
That's not set up in this budget
Right.
discussion.
Okay.
This would be stuff that I'm guessing next year would be coming down potentially if, we decide, hey, this is something we'd like to pursue. Or if any of you are like, hey, I'd like to pursue this, then bring it up and we'll move it forward. Typically, this will come up in a committee discussion and then move forward to full council,
But I think,
the discussion.
I think some are easier to implement than others, right?
Agreed.
Really large undertakings and other things like the charging of the credit card fees for permits is, like,
Yep.
when do you not
That's kind of a
to get
no-brainer.
charged,
Yeah.
right, for using your credit card at certain
Yep.
establishments. So
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if there are things that instead of waiting, things that are just more of a no-brainer can be implemented, but then the other things, we're gonna definitely.
Is that right? Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So the
so-
permit fees was
Wait for your
already,
list, too.
so the
Yeah.
permit fees was already at finance committee. So that one's
Okay.
already coming forward and the finance committee is currently discussing what that looks like.
Great, okay.
The credit card fees um, complicates it a little only because we're in the process of switching software, which is also going to switch our credit card, and they've told us it's going to be even less charge. When I looked at this for Randy McKibben many years ago, at that time, you couldn't charge one unit of the government entity, but not charge the other. So if you were going to charge it to the permits, you had to charge it to your utility billing users if they wanted to pay via credit card. And that was an unpopular choice, and so it didn't pass back then. I don't know if that law has changed. I'd have to look into that. But it's certainly something we can bring forward. I mean, obviously, we do have some people that probably put quite a bit of money on pulling out 3, 4 credit cards because they're making rewards off of that, right? And they're doing it on the city's dime. So it's certainly something I can look at, and if that's something the council wants to hear about, I can, put that on my early 25 list to start talking to finance committee about.
That's kind of a no-brainer because I use my credit card all the time.
Yeah.
And I just know that certain companies that I purchase from, I'm gonna pay a fee, and then other ones you don't.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of a given.
And then the other one that we're already working on to let the mayor know, the revenue that would come from it would be the utility tax. It's already on the books. We just don't charge the other. It's kind of gentleman's agreement, right? Auburn wasn't charging us. We're not charging Tacoma. We have it on the books already, just like Auburn did. They started charging us and we pass that charge on to the Auburn customers, right? That's something we're already currently evaluating and getting that information ready for the mayor to look at. So that might be something that you see sooner than later. But a lot of the taxing portions, those are ones that are going to take a little bit more time and probably a lot more conversation. So it's not really part of the budget process, but just to let you know that there are things we can do and there are things that we're going to be bringing forward to hopefully solve part of this problem, this gap for the future. This isn't something like the mayor said. If this was a one-time thing, I would stomach it too. But if it continues into the next biennium, I'm going to have a little bit of heartburn over that. And I think anybody who would be the mayor would have heartburn over that.
So I believe though that, Tacoma and Valley are pretty small, almost non-existent, but it's fine. It's like, okay, yeah, charge them or whatever, right?
No, Jason had looked at, yeah, I'll let Jason.
There's what, there's
I
like
think,
12 customers in Valley Water? No, exaggerating. There's 125.
Valley Water is really blowing up in the city right now. All of Peak 410, except for 2 buildings, is in Valley Water.
I know wait, but be careful, right? Because yes, mega development, 4 toilets. Okay,
The View by Vintage
right, that's a big one.
is in Valley Water.
Yeah, yeah.
The Jensen 410, which is another about 100-unit complex, is in Valley Water. All of the vacant land on the south side of SR 410, kind of past 219th all the way out to about 229th, is in Valley Water.
And they're going to be big ones, but there's also the mobile home parks and a couple others in there.
I think I don't think the mobile home parks are in there. The new storage unit I think is in there.
Oh,
Mobile home mark.
A couple of them are.
It's weird in that area, but there is.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is,
Yeah.
10 years ago it was big lots with a couple
Yeah.
houses on it. Now it is 408 unit apartment complex in
Yeah. Right.
the View by Vintage. It's the Jensen 410. It's SES fence. It's all the stuff that we're putting on
Those are little guys.
the Peak 410 and then the vacant property on the south side of 410 that's yet to be developed. We don't know what that will look like.
So we actually ran the numbers on Valley.
Yeah, they
We
exist.
haven't run them on Tacoma yet. We're still trying to gather the information for the mayor. So It looks like it would bring in about $31,000
per year or whatever.
per year. Mhm.
And that's current customers, not any future
Right.
customers.
Hopefully you don't have to audit it. Good. The credit card scenario, I was kind of shocked to hear or see a couple of council members in support of that, which is kind of interesting. Would a majority of the council entertaining looking at that?
Sorry,
The credit card fees? What?
Just 2 seconds.
I mean, is that not a normal thing?
That is.
Credit card fees?
I think there's an expectation that you would be paying a credit card fee when applying for something with a city. I don't think, can't imagine it's very common that this just following that.
It's
When's the last time Fred Meyer, Safeway, how much they charge you to use your credit card?
Charge you a debit card fee now for.
Online or,
I did.
online fee or application, you typically.
What?
It was like 3%.
Not it.
We're gonna charge you a credit card.
If you guys want to do that, that's fine.
What are your thoughts? Do
Because you could do it tomorrow. I know Sherry's like, no, you can't.
But no, really, what are your thoughts? Do you have
I
thoughts?
don't have time to research it by tomorrow.
I know,
but-
no, yeah, you know me, I'm like being exaggerating it because it's we've looked at it a bunch of times. It's pretty
Correct.
self-explanatory to do.
No, I'm
It's
serious.
a
Is there
lot of
something-
money.
Is there something that,
Yeah.
is concerning to you about it?
No, it's fine. Because I run a business too, so it's really super obnoxious when I think people charge you to use your credit card to pay you for goods and services, but
Yeah.
it's just a personal opinion.
Yeah, no,
If you're paying for airline tickets or something, you're not getting charged a fee,
Mhm.
Well, they add other fees.
They hide it.
Yeah.
Right.
There's lots of fees.
Yeah. It's
Um,
good.
You can't take your bag.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But we
cool.
don't know that. I mean, the real question I heard
That's
was,
a lot of money.
do we want to increase water utility fees by applying that charge to people?
If the
We
law.
don't compare
is-
that. That would be another conversation. I
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not
exactly.
sure if the law has changed that I can separate them out, and that's what I'm gonna look into.
Just know I wouldn't.
Back in the day, I couldn't,
for that.
Yeah.
and that was kind of the conversation, is that people didn't want the utility
Good.
billing to have to pay a fee, but they did want permitting to have to pay a
It's a
fee. So I'd have to look at that.
You don't think so?
So it's a good conversation to have, and I
Interesting,
think
Cool.
we should probably have it when we have more information,
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
which she's going to get for us, and we will bring it forward when we have that information so that we can have a good discussion, understand what the
Yeah.
intended and unintended consequences of that are.
Cool. That'll be an easy one.
All right.
Budget solved.
Any other budget questions or discussion at this time? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Always available for emails and
Thank you.
phone calls.
Be thorough, Sherry. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
All right, we'll move on to review of council minutes. Councilmember Fullerton and Councilmember Heber.
Did not see any changes.
Actually, I did notice a change that I missed, so I don't know if I need to bring that up. But I missed it when I read through it earlier last week. Do I need to say anything?
What
I'm
is
just
it?
trying to,
Is it something major or something minor?
no, it's like super minor.
Okay.
It was just a time. It was, okay. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right,
I'll
and
CC you.
we'll move on to council open discussion. Anyone? Nope. Okay. Now we're gonna move on to, first discussion item, or our only discussion item. Madam Clerk.
This is discussion item only for AB 24-62, motion M 2462, directing staff to submit the September 2024 version of the environmental stewardship element to the Department of Commerce and to include it in the final version of the comprehensive plan.
Guessing, Mr. Sullivan, did you want to speak to this?
Yeah, we have a couple opening brief remarks and then we'll turn it kind of over to the council. As promised, we're doing the budget comp plan show for the end of the rest of the year. This is the environmental stewardship. Bonney Lake has had an environmental stewardship or equivalent since 1985, addressing a lot of the same features. It's had different names: natural environment, natural features. As noted, this is not one of the mandatory elements required under RCW 3678.070. However, about most of the goals related to in the growth management act are subsequently also referenced in the environmental stewardship element. The biggest item is the environmental stewardship elements helps us comply with the goals from the MPPs and the CPPs. And for refreshers, MPPs is the multi-county planning policies, and the CPPs are Pierce County countywide planning policies. And under RCW 3678-130, our comprehensive plan is required to be consistent with multi-county planning policies and countywide planning policies. So as you look at the matrix that's at the back, most of the things that we are identifying as the kind of driver of that policy is one of those MPPs or CPPs. Briefly, we kind of mirrored the update from a format and flow standpoint that we did with the community development element, added additional explanatory text, updated the maps, and minor updates to section clarity. We also added additional explanation as required by House Bill 1717, which required increased coordination with federally recognized tribes consistent with their treaty rights, and added goals to address this requirement. There were really a lot of minor updates. So this one, we were able to actually provide you with both a completely clean version and then a red line version that showed kind of in strikeout, underline what we changed because we didn't change as much. It's not mandating an update to our critical areas ordinance. And so that's why we brought it forward. We brought a red line version, a clean version, and of course the policy table. As you can see, most of the policies have stayed the same. There's been some modification to the language, but it was not a significant overhaul as we had to do with the community development element. And we can answer any questions related to this item.
Any questions?
Well done.
Councilmember Clemens, did you have something?
Can you explain the comment on ES 3.8 in the matrix? Page 187.
Page what?
187.
What part of the matrix are you questioning?
It's got a comment that says that we're required to add an environmental section
0.8.
by 2029.
Oh, so in the state, I was trying to not get into this one because it's not something that will impact us now. But in the last legislative cycle, the state amended the Growth Management Act again and added as a required element a climate change and resiliency element that has to be completed by 2029. And they have made upwards of $500,000 available to the city to implement that program. So it will be a mandatory element that we have to complete between 2025 and June of 2029. So nothing that happens now, but we did want to let the council know that this is what we're doing now. But in 2025, 2026, you'll see us coming forward with all the grant information to begin to withdraw from that $500,000 that's available for those updates in order to make that update by the 2029 deadline.
Councilmember Baldwin, did you have something?
Yep.
You look like you're about to.
What? You know, because the government always tells you they're gonna give you money to cover something. And what'd you say, 500,000?
Yeah, 500,000.
And then whatever they want us to do is gonna cost way more. So what are they asking for?
We have to go.
There's a lot that's
Water quality
climate
testing.
change and resiliency element. Some of it we've already addressed, some of it we haven't. There's things about VMT, vehicles miles travel, that we'll have to look at, total greenhouse gas emissions that we'll have to look at. But that's what the $500,000 grant is provided for. and that we would have to complete that work by 2029. Updating the comprehensive plan as we've written it doesn't get into those items. That's just something that we're bringing forward in the next 4 years, and we wanted to make council aware of it. Nothing we have to do today by the end of the year as part of this update, but something we will have to do by 2029.
And the 2029 date is from the state for state law, or is that because that's what the grant says?
That's because state law.
Okay.
So under state law, in order to make an amendment mandatory for the periodic update, it has to be done 2 years before the deadline, and you have to have the money 2 years before the deadline. For the jurisdictions,
So 2027?
so our periodic update was required to be done in 2025.
Okay.
And so because the law wasn't passed 2 years before our periodic update, and we didn't have the money 2 years before, they couldn't require it to do it as part of this update. The counties that are updating in 2027, because we update on different schedules. So Kitsap County, Snohomish County, Thurston County, or not Thurston County, Pierce County, Snohomish County, we're all the 2025 jurisdictions. Thurston County is a 2027 jurisdiction, and they're having to do the climate change initiative as part of their periodic update because it got done. When they passed the law, in order so that we didn't wait 10 years to do it, they put a proviso in that in 2029 we had to do it, which is 4 years from now.
Go ahead, sorry. I'm gonna finish. Councilmember Baldwin.
Yeah, so I just, okay, a little confused then, because, for ES 3.8, I'm talking about the requiring the climate change element. But then the notations have to do with ensuring water quality and accounting for potential impacts of climate change on water quality.
Yes.
What does it even mean? What is it? What are they telling us to do based on that?
So when you're water quality, so flooding, sea level rise, increased longer non-rain periods during the summer, those are the types of things that we would be looking at from both kind of a water quality standpoint.
How much is that gonna cost?
More than $500,000?
We have a $500,000 grant. We haven't put it out to bid. We haven't asked for consultants. We haven't developed a scope of work because it wasn't something that we had to do as part of this periodic update. That's the big climate work is going to be that we have to do will be stuff that we talk to the council in 25 and 20, probably 26 and 27 about in order to make that 29 deadline. We haven't done it. We're waiting to see how the 2027 jurisdictions get through this before we start committing to action, because the 2027 jurisdictions are going to show us the roadmap, and we'll be able to see what their consultants did, what we will have to do, and then we can have a better estimate. The 2027 jurisdictions are working through those issues right now. And so we're waiting. We're kind of luckily, the first time ever, we're able to wait and see. Usually we're the first ones that have to do everything.
Councilmember McClymans.
So we can delete 3.8.
No, because 3.8 is still required to meet the MPPs that are cited.
Could they notice?
I can't.
I'll make a motion to remove ES 3.8.
Second.
I think that was
A motion made and seconded to remove ES 3.8.
Amend the agenda first.
Oh,
Your rules.
I want to cry.
I mean, if the council wants us to remove it, I mean, it's the council's document. I will say this is what we brought to the planning commission. The planning commission has reviewed it, and this is the planning commission's recommendation to continue forward with this level of work. If the council wants to amend that or change it, we've always said, give us the head nods and we'll take things out. But the answer, will they miss it? Will they say something? I can't say what the Department of Commerce and PSRC will say when we give them the final element. That's, not something I can guarantee one way or the other would be assured. But it's if the council wants to remove it and gives me the head nods when we bring it back for action, it would be removed.
Councilmember Hubler.
So in that ES 3.8, the wording there, does it have to be worded that way? I mean, well, like require regular water quality monitoring and improvement projects to ensure safe drinkable water for all residents, regardless of race, social, or economic status, accounting for potential impacts of climate change on water quality. The drinkable water for all residents. Like just the no brainer, but does it require us to have all the excess wording and
Yeah, that's what's really coming from the MPPs. That's why this was a new policy that was added.
That's out of 2050.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's out of Vision 2050.
I would say we already do. I mean, from a what are we going to do? It doesn't change a lot of what we're going to do. We already do regular water quality testing,
right?
and we don't. Right. We don't do different water testing in different parts of the city. We have a blended system. So from a on the grounds kind of practical level, I don't think it changes kind of what we're doing when it comes to our water quality and our water testing. We're already doing all of that, and we're already looking at, well, what happens in the summer because we don't get as much rain in the summer. For whatever reason, the summer is just drier, and that has an impact on our water supply. So, I mean, I don't know if it necessarily changes functionally what we're doing as a government, but the language is what it is. And I can pull up these, if you want me to pull up these two MPPs real quick, I can read them to you and let you see what they say. If you just give me like 2 seconds, I can pull them up.
And I agree with Councilmember Hubler that the whole like providing safe drinkable water to all, regardless of the race, social or economic status. It's like there's Bonney Lake water,
We love all our
right?
residents.
Like,
So
and we make sure that
We all
water
get the
source,
same water.
that water source for all is drinkable.
I always thought we should make sure that, you know,
There may
the
be
guys across the
disparate
street here
impacts
should.
on- It's just a ridiculous policy thing, right? In my mind, that, they throw out there that is so not applicable to a city our
Right.
size or something.
Yes.
Well, and I think the fear is that there's a $500 grant here, but whatever they cause us to do is gonna, $500,000 grant here, we're gonna have to cause to do by this policy is gonna cost us more than that, is then gonna have a bigger impact on our budget for a policy that I know we're already doing a lot of the things Jason said, but it seems like whenever we do get a grant, that pays for about the guys to come in and tell us what to do, and then we get to spend our own money to do it. So
I think the problem with that though is we're going to be forced to do it with or without the grant. So
Yes.
at least we get something with the grant on this one.
aren't we already monitoring our water
Well,
quality and
Yes.
The climate change element's going to go a lot beyond this. I think they're just trying to add, hey, be aware that some of these things are going to change when we bring the climate initiative forward. And this is exactly what EMPE and the reference policy from Vision 2050 says. It says, ensure that all residents of the region, regardless of race, social or economic status, have clean air, clean water, or other elements of the healthy environment. And then 10.
Need to get air freshener outside.
Urban-based.
10 says support and incentivize environmental stewardship of private and public lands to protect and enhance habitat, water quality, and other ecosystems, including the protection of watersheds and wellhead areas that are the source of the region's drinking water supplies. So the way we do this is we look at what their policies are, and then we try to find a way to craft a policy that also is consistent with that policy.
But we can change the words and still be compliant.
Correct. I think if you delete the part you're wanting to delete, would not follow the first policy I read.
Yeah, because it's almost verbatim.
We stole the language kind of verbatim.
Yeah. I knew that didn't.
I know, but if you just said for all period, I mean, would anybody catch it? And it's still the spirit of is this a letter to Santa Claus? Is that really what?
And I think too, and I kind of go back and remind the council too, there is, and I believe Jennifer has said this too, the policies establish a framework. They establish things that we should consider. provide general guidance to staff, but it's really looking at the things that we're doing on the ground, right? We're not changing how we're going to monitor our water. We're still going to monitor the water the same way we monitor water. We're still going to do the testing that we're going to do. We're still going to protect our watersheds because we have a fiduciary responsibility to do that in order to protect our water source. So it's not like any, it's, yes, the language is changing, but is it changing in practice what we are doing as a city? And I think that's the important thing to differentiate. Is this change in policy forcing a change in the way that the city operates through its development regulations or through its testing procedures? We're still going to test our water quarterly, still provide those testing results. We're still going to have our wellhead protection areas to protect our wellheads. It doesn't really change what we're, I think, physically doing, but it does change the policy to be more explicit and I'm trying to, it does change the policy, but I don't know if it changes what we're actually doing.
Does it help staff to know that council doesn't appreciate that language?
I don't think it comes from them since they're doing word for word verbatim what the GMA says.
All I'm asking is that, so this makes policy, staff implements policy. In this case, the policy is being dictated.
Yeah.
But the language of the policy, council feels it's wonky and has an agenda. And we're just saying, yeah, we'd rather not take that agenda so explicitly, but keep the basic principle, which is we need good, clean water for everybody, regardless, period.
And I think regardless of how this is worded, I think that's how staff would interpret it, that
That's what
everybody who lives in the city of Bonney Lake, regardless of where they live, how much money they make, all the things that are listed, they still all get the same drinking water and move forward. I think the only thing it might impact is if we have two competing projects and how you make the differentiation in the priorities. If you have a water system expansion where you're replacing steel water pipe and one's in a lower income area and one's in a higher income area, you might prioritize B over A if they're tied on all other facets.
Councilmember Baldwin.
I was also looking at ES 10, and that has to do with the reduction of the greenhouse emissions to 25%. So again, I guess I'm asking the same questions, like how is this going to affect Bonney Lake specifically? Like, is this as new builds are coming in that they have certain requirements that they now have to meet in regards to the emissions or whatever? Or is it, businesses just as a whole have to then go through regulations to reduce, or if they want to even remodel their business, suddenly now they have these new regulations. Like, I'm trying to find out what's the practical way that the government expects us
to
do that.
So a lot of it's driven by regulations that are already in place. So there's two parts of this. One, it's already driven by regulations that are in place. So when you come in to get a building permit, you have to meet the new energy code, right? We don't have a say that you can't comply with the 2021 energy codes. So when you build a new house, the houses that are being built in 2021 are, in theory, more efficient, use less greenhouse gases, and therefore that's how they're doing that thing. The building code also requires currently that you pre-wire houses for electrical vehicle charging, and it requires new commercial developments to put in electrical vehicle charging stations. Even if you didn't have this policy, the building code would require it because that's how the state adopted the building code. But those are the things that we point to when we're asked how we're implementing this policy. The second part of it is sometimes we need to have these things in here in order to be successful at grants and get points. So if you don't have policies like this, when you go to apply for grants, you actually score lower than if you have those policies. So that's the other side of this, is sometimes we're putting policies in here so that when we apply for overlay grants, street improvement grants, we can actually say, yes, we have a greenhouse reduction policy, and there's actually points, and sometimes it's mandatory, depends on the grant. So it's two parts. One, I think a lot of the things that we're already doing in our building code, which is, you know, in theory, and I'm not an expert in energy code, but this is kind of the way it's been explained to me, is the goal of the energy code is to make it more efficient and less reliant on greenhouse gases. The way we're doing requiring electrical vehicle charging stations is part of that, in theory, assumption. We're not taking any specific. The only thing that we've done, I think, that's more kind of specific is we require shading over parking lots to prevent urban heat island effect, which makes it warmer around areas with lots of parking within areas that don't have that type of shading, which then requires more air conditioning because it's warmer. You can actually be 5 to 10 degrees warmer in areas with very low tree canopy because the blacktop collects that heat all day and then releases it at night.
I mean, heat is also collected by solar panels and they want to layer solar panels all over. It literally will increase it. I think what's missing honestly is actual science. You know what I'm saying?
Like I said,
I know, I'm just saying.
I'm trying to answer a
I do
question.
have a degree in science.
Yeah, this is, I was only bringing up the heat island effect because I know that's one thing that isn't specifically called out that we put in,
Yeah,
because there is science that showed if you have tree canopy over blacktops,
yes.
it does reduce that heat island effect. And I felt that the most extreme time I ever felt that was when I was in New Mexico, and my wife and I were walking down the street at like 10 o'clock at night, and the heat radiating off the pavement was hotter than the heat in the air. And so I have felt it firsthand. And so that's what the heat island effects is trying to get at, is how do you reduce that release of heat at night? That's one, I guess that's one thing we are doing. It's not just specifically mandated.
Councilmember Fullerton.
Yeah, so they do have really hot sun in Arizona. They don't have a lot of trees. They don't have tree canopies. But what they do have is they have these really nice little tent things that they put over every single playground so the kids don't get burned. Also, the equipment doesn't get as hot as it would if the sun was on it. And then they also have parking lots that have canopies over a lot of the parking spaces, especially if you're picking up. But a lot of those also have solar panels on them. So they can provide electricity to the electric cars that need to be charged while they're shopping. So, I mean, are there things like that that Washington State would allow other than planting trees when they have to, you know, for a parking lot or whatever, for the tree canopy to be approved? Can you actually put a canopy or a canvas canopy?
Well, I don't know if you could do a
you know,
canvas canopy because that would just be a temporary.
These aren't temporary. These are over every playground.
Well,
over
when
the
it comes
state of
to
Arizona.
when it comes to the parking lot,
preschool.
no one has ever come to me and say, "Can we not do trees? Can we build a structure?" Right? Because I think that the structure is
don't wanna deal
actually
with your
probably a
permit
higher
department, no.
higher cost. But yes, if someone wanted to come and propose
Pay
covering
the credit card.
parking lots with
Solar panels.
solar panel, we would gladly entertain it. It's just, would the council want us to write a requirement mandating that?
No, I don't want any mandates. That's the thing. I'm trying to figure out ways to, you know, get away from mandates because they harm people. I mean, they hurt people financially. And then did I hear you just say something about some of the new requirements is going to be that new homes are going to be required to have electric charging stations?
It's pre-wiring.
It's
Pre-wiring.
pre-wired, okay, because, you know, I don't know, I don't know about all of you, but I literally just watched a video of a Tesla blow up while it's being charged.
Oh, yeah.
That seems like a fire hazard, and you mix water with electricity and, you know, for your also requirement of having a sprinkler system. So then you add
So,
fire, or you add electrical fire to a water extinguisher, and that really makes things worse.
so most of the charging, there's three levels of charging stations. And most of the ones that you see out in the field are the rapid charging stations, and they move a lot of current very fastly to get the car charged in a short amount of time. What is required in the home is what they call the level one, which is basically a 240 volt outlet in the house, which are already in houses. That's what your dryer typically runs off of. So most garages, though, don't have a 240 outlet hardwired in. So typically it's wiring a 240 volt outlet, which is already common in some houses. That's what they run dryers on. So it's not building it's not putting in a charging station like you see in front of the public safety or the public services building. It's an outlet that's in the garage that can handle a higher voltage than your standard 120.
But
Well,
follow up.
It's a follow up. Go ahead.
So we're gonna ban fuel. We're going to cut back on all of our hydroelectric dams. But we're going to require more electricity and more electrical outlets and more wiring for new homes. So just kind of wondering how we're gonna pay for, where are the scientists? I'm not a scientist, but seems like we need to have a little bit of everything and not.
And I would caution the city to say that the city is banning these things. The Washington State Building Code is adopted by the Washington State Legislature.
No, I meant Washington State.
Yeah.
Did I say city? Sorry.
Yeah, and so there's not a lot we can do to not
It's
require.
just our requirement that's
Yeah.
happening to us.
Right, and it's not, and PSE is aware of this. We've talked with PSE. There are concerns about how do you build out the grid to support all of that. It's not so much when I talk with PSE, it's not so much the generation, it's the grid itself. And they are, PSE is the entity charged with providing power, and they are looking through that process. I can't speak to PSE. Yes, that is definitely a challenge that's been raised. How is all this going to work? That's why PSE and the scientists are coming together to figure out how they're going to.
I would like to meet those scientists.
In an effort to move us along, just because that's a state
I'm good.
deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to move. So, Councilmember Davis.
I was just looking at ES 10.7, 10.8, and 10.9 on page 198, and I was just curious about the wording there where it says incentivize renewable energy sources. So how are we incentivizing people to do that? And is that going to create problems because sometimes those renewable energy sources are more expensive than other products, let's say? So if you're building a new home, is that going to increase our home value? Or increase the cost of a new home or home affordability. So I'm just curious about the wording there on those in that section.
I think, like I said, as this is a new policy, we haven't developed how we would incentivize that. That would be something that we would start beginning to have conversations with the council about what that actually looks like. It could be that when you put in solar panels, there's a reduced fee for adding solar panels. It could be when you build a house, if you do solar panels, we deduct that from the value of the building so that you're not paying, you're getting kind of a fee incentive for adding the solar panels and not getting charged additional permit fees for installing those. So that's just kind of off the cuff, one thing I could see where you're how the city can incentivize the use of solar panels. Remember the policy is should consider, as you read the policy, I always say, put in front of it should consider. So what would happen over the next 10 to 20 years, the staff would start developing programs that they would bring to city council to consider. There's nothing in the work plan for this item in the next 2 to 4 years. So Yes, we would want to develop programs that incentivize those things, and that would be something that would bring to council to see what those incentives look like. And the solar panel ideal is one. There could be solar panels, I'm just on the solar panels because that's the one that we were talking about and it's the top of my head. They don't add to your building height. Solar panels can be in setbacks. So there are ways you can do it. And we would start to look around and see what other jurisdictions are doing and bring a list of incentives to council for them to consider. No incentives in mind yet.
I think Councilmember Hubler, did you still have something?
Yes and no. So in the thing, it says, 38% is our tree canopy. Is that our current or is that just our goal?
What
Which
page are you
one
on?
are we?
Oh, sorry, that was back in.
In the
Is it an ES?
Yes, it's an ES. Where'd it go? It was on the tree canopy stuff. Man, we're just jumping all over the place. 38% goal ES 8-8.
We're currently at 34%. In 2008, we were at 43%. And so our goal is to get back to 38%.
All the trees coming down in the Midtown.
That was part of it.
And then we're gonna have more trees come down in Midtown.
Yep. And that's why it's a balance.
Where are we gonna add more trees?
Well, but you gotta remember when we did the urban, when they did this analysis, they assumed the clear cut at the Costco and Wisconsin site. Part of what we require is when we require the trees to be replanted, they begin to restore the canopy. So when we do the next analysis to see what our canopy is, probably in the next 5 to 7 years, those trees will get maturity and you'll start to see tree growth. We also look for areas of the city to plant. So I know this year, the Boy Scouts went out and planted trees at Allen York Park in the kind of wetland field area between Ball Field 5 and the main area that can't be used for anything, but it's got a bunch of just crabgrass in it because it's wetland buffer that it was decimated decades ago. And they went out and planted a bunch of trees in there. And so that way, that area wasn't tree canopy. And as we plant those trees, we begin to restore that canopy.
What happens in areas though, like where the dog park, where trees are gonna have to come down because it's too dense and there's no light within that tree canopy that's currently there?
So we would propose to do replanting. So if we had to remove tree canopy because it's too dense or because the trees are diseased, we then do replanting to begin to restore that tree canopy. So it is lost in the interim and then is restored over the long term. And that's why we're really trying to preserve as much as we can because it's really hard to restore.
What was that we were talking about the other day about the in lieu fee?
So we do have a voluntary in lieu fee program that when you go to plant trees on your property, as required by code, when you do tree removal, if you don't have enough space to get everything back on, you can pay into an in lieu fee program that can be then used by the city to purchase trees, plant trees elsewhere in the city. Other cities have used it to do what they call a tree for a coupon, where they go to Lowe's and Home Depot and say, the city's going to buy 200 trees, and then people can get those coupons and go plant trees in their yards. So that's another program that you can develop with that type of thing. Those are the approaches we're using to get back to that goal.
Councilmember Baldwin and then Councilmember McClung.
This is my last general comment, so you don't have to reply to my comment. I do find it odd that you would incentivize, again, solar panels that literally increase the temperature, surface temperature. But you have a requirement to reduce the temperature with the blacktop, right? It's like it's negating each other and it doesn't it's not logical. You don't have to respond. I needed to just say that. Also in ES 11.2, just a minor detail, but it says Mount Rainier.
Typo.
Somebody's from out of state. But that is,
Page 199.
and Jason, as usual,
Yeah.
Thank you.
I do.
We will correct the typos.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Climens.
Yeah, so you're doing great,
Yeah, he is.
right? It's our job to ask questions.
And I knew this was going to be tough, which is why when they said, can we do community development and environmental stewardship on the same night, I said, no, I probably, I was under no illusion that this council was not going to have problems.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you know us.
He does.
You do.
With the policies in here, and we are trying to do our best to balance council's desire,
Yeah.
regional requirements, state requirements, and county requirements.
So on page 97, I'm going to read a paragraph and I need to understand it.
Under
Um,
urban forestry.
Yes, it says previous best practice established a 40% coverage, canopy coverage as an average for urban areas. However, as of 2017, this is no longer the best practice based on existing impervious surface, future population projections, and a land use analysis. The city has established a new canopy goal of 38%. The urban canopy is concentrated in existing residential and open space areas. So how did we decide that statement that it's no longer a best practice, and what is the best practice? Is it possible to get the best practice put in there?
Due to the Bonney Lake canopy.
So what it was the kind of, how do I say this? The 40% urban tree canopy came from what was an old document that came from the National Arborist Society that looked at kind of what things were, and it just kind of said for urban areas, it should be 40%. But it didn't take into account kind of what the city was, how the city functioned. And so when we did the last technical review, we kind of looked at what our tree canopy goal, what our tree canopy was, which was 43%. Also knowing that we were going to lose tree canopy down to 34% because if you look at the map, we had them digitize in the tree removal for the WSU force because it actually hadn't happened already. We knew it was happening. The permits were in process, so we just had them digitize that loss in. And so the discussion was, well, what's the right number? And in looking at what we have to accommodate, the things that we need to do, the decision based on the technical memorandum back in 2017 was 38%. We could go back to 40%. That's not a problem if the council wants to go to a 40%. But we landed on 38%, which is
How? I mean, that was my question. I mean,
it's.
why didn't you land on 34%?
I think it was looking at where we were coming from, which was 43% down to 34, and trying to find where we thought we could land in the medium.
Okay.
This is not something where I can, like an engineering exercise where I can point to like this city with this size with this square footage equals this. That's why it's a goal, not a requirement. It's not like we're going to be penalized. I will say the one consistent thing I have seen in the Bonney Lake comprehensive plans going back all the way to 1967 is a strong desire to protect the trees in the city. That's always hard because the other thing I've also learned being here for 12 years is everybody wants the trees protected as long as it's on someone else's property.
Neighbor's tree.
Right. I will say that one of the biggest complaints we get when we get development coming in, and I know Councilmember Climens, you got one of the emails, was when we did a plat. It wasn't about the traffic. It wasn't about the home values. It was about the loss of 4 acres of tree canopy. The number one complaint we get in for subdivisions and new development is the loss of tree canopy. That tree canopy, those old growth trees are part of what make Bonney Lake. And it's a struggle between what makes the community and then what allowing individual property owners to develop their property. And it's always going to be a tension. I don't think I'll ever get you a system that is perfectly aligned because it's a give and take between those two things. I will say that the Bonney Lake went all the way up to the Washington State Supreme Court to preserve tree canopy as you come up the hill. So it is something that has been a community value. And how do you protect that community value in a way that is respectful of property rights, but also maintains what Bonney Lake is and what people experience as the community of Bonney Lake? Because if we just cut down every tree and it was like Tacoma, people would say that's not Bonney Lake. And so it's that tension between those two. That's why we landed on 38%, recognizing that we were going to have some loss, but also trying to restore back in a way that was respectful of what was here before and not scientific, more policy.
Thank you.
Sorry, Hubler, did you still have something?
Yes. So back to the fee in lieu of, where is that money currently going?
It goes into a specifically set aside account that Sherry tracks. It is completely income restricted and it just sits there until we have enough to do a project or we develop purchase trees with it. It cannot be used on anything else. It is in a specific locked aside account that Sherry tracks, and I can email her today and say how much is in that account, and it can only be used for that purpose.
Okay, that makes me feel better that it's not just being randomly used if somebody's paying into that.
And the staff cannot change that restriction because it's actually written that way in the code.
Okay.
So in order to change it from being income for being a restricted funding source would require a vote of the city council. We actually wrote it in the municipal code.
Okay.
Any further questions?
I just want to know what we're doing about policy 3.8. That was the only one I heard that there might be like, strike it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just the wording.
For it.
Just ended it all.
Get rid of it.
Good.
Jason, on page 181, we had talked about the, on 9.0, possibly being able to delete that one, or did you take it out already? It's on 181. It was that the urban forestry goals and regulations?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Fullerton. She brought this to my attention last year or this week. If you go to page 181, there's a policy E9.1 that says preserve Pierce County's designation of urban agricultural lands for long-term commercial significance for property so designated in the proposed Funnel Creek Corridor UGA. That was something we were trying to put in order to do some annexations that were going to be a little tricky. We're not pursuing that anymore, so that policy can just go away.
Which number was that again?
9.1.
Right at the top of page 181.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's the first one.
It was last week.
It's not under
It's been a
the,
long week. I apologize.
it's just a
Been a
paragraph.
long week, Tuesday.
That's how long it's been.
I hear you. Yeah.
Tomorrow's hump day.
All right. Any further discussion on this? Okay, I think we're good then. So the question, are you good? Sorry.
Question is, what do we do next?
Right, so the question would be, is it going to, with those changes, is it going to consent or full council issues for the next week?
It looks like full council. I think Councilmember Hubler is going to give us a rundown on it, right?
I just want one more opportunity to go back through because there's so much
Yes.
to digest. And there's still, even just in this discussion, there's been still things that, you go, wait,
You
what?
read it, but you don't see
And
it.
it may not be you that has to vote on an action that these policies
Yeah.
trigger, right? So.
I'm hearing full council.
Sorry, guys.
That's what.
No, I think that's good. It's responsive.
It's fine, yeah. All right, full council. And that's it, yeah. We are adjourned.
You be Skippy.
No, bring the gavel down for my office.
Right.
I have to-
Yeah, right.
It's like